Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of Within. We're Nicky, Wallace, and Ali Payne, and we're excited to kick this off with you. This podcast is powered by the People Co., and we created it for one reason. Organizations transform from the inside out. When leaders focus on their people, really focus on them, everything changes. Today, we're diving in to why culture is built from within, not with perks or quick fixes, but looking at a real people strategy. All right, let's get into it. So let's first talk about how the heck we even got here. Ali joined my team about a year ago. I will have started this company it'll be 5 years in May. And we get asked all the time kind of how we got here. So we figured this would be a good place to start. I'll be as candid as possible on my story here, but I was with a big firm for 9 years, had my first baby during COVID. And when I came back, things were not as I thought that they would be. So I think that's the nicest, easiest way to say it. The company had evolved a lot. I was lucky. I had started at it in a time where there was a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth. We very much worked as a small business kind of in the market and absolutely loved it until kind of things changed and my world changed and my life evolved. But May of 2021, I had been asking, kind of thinking through like where am I going? What's happening with my life? I don't necessarily love where I'm at right now. I was in sales. I was top performer for many years, and the grind with that, alongside raising a small human, just wasn't working anymore. So my body was, starting to show signs of burnout, and I mentally just didn't think I could do it anymore. So long story short, my husband was on a trip in Mexico. He loves to tell this story. And I called him and told him I quit my job at 8:30 in the morning. And I had no idea what I was going to do, no idea where life would take me at that point. And I share that a lot because I don't think, I've had a lot of people ask like, oh, you were planning to do this all along. And no, life happened. And I come from a very entrepreneurial family, but I knew I always wanted to do something. But at that moment in time, I was so dang burned out. I didn't know where life was taking me. So I quit my job. He took a shot of tequila. We tried to figure out what was in Mexico. He came back a couple days later, and we just kind of went from there. So a couple weeks into being a stay-at-home mom that I thought I was going to be, I actually got a couple of calls from clients and kind of was surprised, to be honest. I didn't think that a lot of people even knew I existed at that point, let alone like really wanted to work with me, which is kind of funny because I predominantly supported manufacturing companies, staffing for them. And yeah, so I had a couple of them ask if I could still work with them. And I said, I don't know. Let me find out. I'd already thrown away kind of all my books at that point and thought I was never going to recruit again. And 4.5 years later, here we are. So I will always forever be grateful for my experience. I think I learned a ton, being able to work with a big organization that had an office in a small market. And all the things that came with that. I learned a ton about business. I learned a ton about scaling, what to do, what not to do. And yeah, so it was fun. May 21st, 2021 is when I actually filed for my LLC. I had about 10 minutes to make my LLC. So our company is actually NMW Consulting, and it has evolved over the years. So we started really just doing outsourced recruiting. So where I would focus on being the recruiter for different companies. Super fun. We grew super fast. We were totally referral based for the first, year and a half. A lot of people didn't even think we were legit. We had a couple people go try to find us on the internet and couldn't. And it was fun. I grew. I had 3 team members within 9 months of starting NMW and doing the outsourced recruiting. And then we had a lot of clients ask us about the staffing side. So staffing was never really something I 100% wanted to get back into. It just, everybody knew me there. And so I decided to jump in, not knowing what it would look like to actually own a staffing company. I had Nora, our second daughter, in August of 22, and we actually ended up signing on an office in October of 22. So Nora, I always say I owe this business to Nora because she literally went to every banking appointment and accounting appointment and looked at 50 offices with me. So we ended up launching Hire DSM, renaming to Hire DSM in January of 23, and supported clients with both the outsourced recruiting model as well as in consulting and as well as the staffing. So did the staffing or added the staffing. That was always something I wanted to be like a tool in our toolbox for our clients. And it turned into craziness. It was, which is staffing, especially in the manufacturing and construction markets. So we did that for about a year and a half, and I didn't love it, to be really honest. It was fast. It was, we would place 10 welders and 5 of them would fall off. I loved my clients. I loved what we were doing. I loved working with the businesses. That's always been a passion of mine, is trying to figure out why they need to hire and how we can support them with, like, what is that strategy, like their business strategy, where are we trying to go, and how do we do that with the people that they need or think they need. So did that for a year and a half. And I actually had somebody approach me in July of 23 to potentially purchase the agency. And I happily said, sure. I did not know where I was going at that point, but I had been having some medical issues kind of along the way, and I did not want to do it anymore. So more on my health journey and all of that, because it kind of goes kind of where we've evolved to where we are right now as the People Co. But I sold the agency in August of 23. And we went back to just doing the outsourced recruitment. I'd been meeting Ali along the way, which ended up being a blessing. It would have been a blessing either way, but then our paths officially, ended up crossing. But I knew when the agency, when I sold that I wanted to get back to, like, how do we really help clients understand why they need to hire, who they need to hire, what that looks like, and how do you do it right the first time so you're not constantly churning and burning. I've worked with so many companies over the years that it's like they just, recruiting is on the back burner. And when I didn't talk about this, but one of the first things I did when I started my first gig in June of 21 is I met with a lot of people from my past and said, me, I have this crazy idea. I feel like I can go do this for other companies. Tell me what you actually do in a day. So I interviewed, for lack of a better word, really 10 or 11 HR people and asked them, like, what do you actually do, right? Because as a vendor, the last 9 years, we would always say, oh, they just aren't responding to our emails, or, they're ghosting us or whatever. You would get all pissed. And it was very eye-opening that all 10 of these people that I met in all stages of life, in all different roles within kind of HR or support roles in an organization, they all said, I'm expected to do employee relations. I'm expected to do benefits, comp. I'm expected to do payroll. And oh, by the way, then I have to go recruit 20 people. And I said, holy shit, like, this is why people in the HR world don't love recruiting, because they have to do essential functions of a company for it to run, right? You don't get payroll out. Somebody's going to have a quit and hate their company because they think they didn't pay or, get paid, or, somebody doesn't get their benefits, or something happens and something's done wrong. That all falls on the HR person. So anyway, so the agency knew I wanted to, dive deeper really for with some of these companies. And in the meantime, I was actually in a Goldman Sachs 10K small business program. And I was also, which we'll also talk about at another date, but I was an ex-employee of mine had actually filed a lawsuit against me. So I was kind of going through all of these things at the same time. And the only reason I was able to prove some of the things in the suit was because of the documentation. And I would never call myself a HR police, or like I'm probably outside the box way more than I'm inside. But I was sitting in these classes, and all this was kind of going on. And I realized there was 32 entrepreneurs in there, including myself. And everybody was kind of talking about, their uncle's son is working for me and he never shows up and I don't know what to do. And being the only HR person in the room, a lot of people looked to me. And again, at that point, I didn't really see myself as this super like compliance heavy HR person. But with my background, I know more than the average Joe, right? So I started asking questions about job descriptions and handbooks, and nobody had them. Like nobody had them. I think maybe one or two people had a couple of things. And I realized in that moment, like, oh my gosh, we have to do something and take this experience that I've had with recruitment, with the HR world, and be able to support small to mid-sized businesses. Ultimately, the work we do could go alongside any organization because there's always gaps or people or, projects that come up or whatever. But how do we do this? So that's how the People Co. So I rebranded after the company that bought my agency did not take the name. They were starting their own agency here in town, and they just wanted the operations. And so I rebranded to the People Co. And then Ali came into my life. And I was so excited about that. So that's my background, kind of how we got. I'm going to stop there because Ali and I are going to share a lot more about the People Co. now, kind of where we are, how we've evolved. But I was lucky enough to get a call from Ali Payne. What was it? October of last year? Just November.
Yeah, like November, early November.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I was like, really at the time. I think when I was younger and didn't really know what I wanted to do, I always wanted to do something like this. Like be on my own and be able to call my own shots and not necessarily always have to figure out like how was I gonna, keep working in an organization. And so it was like perfect timing for me anyway.
Yeah. So Ali Payne, you want to introduce yourself? I just gave my spiel on my last 4.5 years of my life, but you want to introduce yourself and who you are and
Yeah.
how you got here?
Yeah, so I'm Ali Payne and I am super excited to be here. I think my story is similar yet different in that I started my career in corporate well-being, corporate wellness, if you will. So back in the day when organizations would spend tons and tons of money on building amazing looking fitness centers that frankly no one would really use, that's where I started. So I used to teach group exercise. I would, teach all kinds of nutrition classes, like you name it. So that's kind of my roots. And then over time, I transitioned into more consulting, particularly in the employee experience space. So I constantly, during my career at a global broker out of Chicago, I spent so much time like questioning why we were doing all this wellness stuff when at the root of it, it was really about the leaders and the people that were showing up for these employees, where we would say one thing and do something different. And so I just was always like, there's got to be a way to help organizations see it from both sides.
Right.
Like the days of like telling people they have to be a certain weight or have a certain BMI or have a cholesterol or a blood pressure. There's just so much more to the human than their numbers. But we spent so much time trying to figure out like, how do we help people get to this like certain weight or certain blood pressure? And so I said to the organization I was at, I believe we can do it different. I think that there's an opportunity to get employers to think about the employee experience in a holistic way. And luckily, at about the exact same time, Gallup came out with the 5 essentials of well-being. So if you don't know what the 5 essentials of well-being are, that's really the root of what I believe in. And I was living in Minneapolis, and then I was in Chicago, and then I came to Des Moines and worked for another broker that was kind of trying to do the same thing. And it was a super good experience. It was really fun. I learned a lot, but I never felt like I fit in, and I never really felt like I could show up as my authentic self. And so when that started really becoming apparent and waning on my own mental health, so my mental health at home, my mental health with my family, I think my husband thought I was crazy and falling completely off my rocker, and was just spending time doing things that I don't really think most of the organization really understood or even wanted to. Like they wanted to focus on the clinical stuff, which is easy, right? Like the clinical health of your organization, it shows up in your healthcare costs. That's important. And managing those claims is important. But it seems to me that we've been doing that for forever. And it's insanity, right? Like it's literally the definition of insanity. And so I wanted to challenge that and challenge the opportunity to say, like, it doesn't have to be about the clinical aspect of it. Can that be a component of it? Of course. And it should be. Like every organization should think about it. And so About a year ago, I lost my job. That organization was probably tired of me challenging what they were doing and how they were doing it. And so I lost my job. And I luckily had been meeting with Nicky about how do we partner together, because we could do the employee experience stuff, but we couldn't do the recruiting. That was just not something we did. And the organization didn't have that in their wheelhouse, and we didn't have it on our team. And so we were talking to Nicky about, like, how do we help people think about hiring differently?
Mm-hmm.
And that hiring differently piece really, can change the game for a lot of employers. If they actually have a plan, they're not just like looking on LinkedIn or using Indeed or whatever. If they actually had a strategy on how they were recruiting and how they were hiring, and then what that onboarding, looked like, that's where I felt like, could we work together? Luckily, I lost my job and we got to work together. So I've been here about a year. I think it was about a year ago we launched the People Co. kind of more in a formal, like, Ali joined the team, and we've got Meredith and, a bunch of other people that have said, like, we want to do something different. We don't want to do the same old, HR consulting that we've been doing or we're doing with an organization. And so it's been really, really fun. And I think, when you take a step back and you think about your life, I believe we were put here for a reason. And while my background was in well-being, when I started talking to Nicky, I didn't know anything about her journey in well-being, right? Like, I had no idea. And because I had been doing corporate well-being for so long, I was like, there's got to be something here that's different than what everyone else is talking about. And it really is. And so where we believe and where I believe we can take organizations is to get them to think about, like, everything from recruiting to their onboarding to their employee experience. That's where I think, the future of all of this stuff is really going, is how do you meet people where they are? And that's where Nicky met me. She met me where I was, which is at a pretty darn low place. I think I've come a long way in 12.
It's been a good year.
Yeah, right. So that's a little bit about kind of what we've been doing. I've spent tons of time helping organizations with their, their technology platforms, or helping them figure out, like, what's their employee engagement survey say, and how do they actually make their employee engagement or their culture assessment, like, how do they actionize it? So how do they actually take action to what it says what it says they should and could? And so, it's just an opportunity to kind of reset. And again, HR people have so much on their plate, and this all lands on them, right? And so while Nicky spends time doing HR consultant, I want to help those people get some of the stuff off their plate so they don't have to have one more thing that's in that wheelhouse. So it makes a super good, fun partnership, because there's usually things that, need to get off their plate, and they just don't know how to do that. And so we can help them do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been fun. And when we were talking about, like, I'm taking notes as you're talking, because I'm like, we've evolved so much in the last year. I mean, since I sold my agency, I didn't know for sure where I was going. I thought I was going to be a party of one this year, just, doing fractional consulting. And it's been so fun to see kind of like where this is all gone. But, we chose the name for Within because I think so many consultants and so many people are, we're forced to, I think in some ways, like, everything's like, oh, this is what you do and this is who you are. But, like, we are people, and, like, there's life that happens, and there's, just because my alarm clock goes off in the morning doesn't mean my, symptoms from burnout or stress, stop, or, whatever the case. Just because I have to go to work doesn't mean my kid is polite in the morning and just does what he's supposed to, or, she's supposed to do, so I can get out the door. So to us, like, Within is, it's work that we're doing is encompassing the whole person alongside an organization. So if your people aren't well, your organization ultimately is going to struggle in different ways, whether that's a turnover or, well-being overall. Your people, very candidly, the organization I worked in before, 5 or 6 of us were trying to get pregnant for years, and none of us could. There's reasons for that. That's not super common that all the women in one organization have to all be going to infertility appointments together. So anyway, we'll get into all of this with the things, but when you think of Within, it's within life, within you, within the organization. Ali, very simply, when we were talking about names, was like, let's just Within. It's everything. So that doesn't mean we'll necessarily talk about all the things, but all the things do go into your everyday. And we want to start looking at, what the work that we're doing from a holistic, 10,000 foot view, like what is happening with the organization, with the person itself, and how do you support all those things that are happening while still, growing the organization, because business still does go on. We all acknowledge that. Like you still, we don't have all the not for profits running around the world. There's business has to get done, but how do you do it differently as people evolve? So I don't know if you want to say anything else on that, Ali, but
No, I mean, the name to me just made complete sense because it is about this whole inner, what's happening within us, within our families, within our organizations, within our businesses, within every single one of us, personally and professionally, and that's really what we're going to talk about on the Within podcast moving forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's so great to be here. We're so excited to be talking about all of the things. Not everybody is going to love everything that we say, and that's okay. But Ali and I really believe in where we're going, and what we're driving. And we want to support the people around us, ultimately. So we hope it gave you a real sense of kind of like where we are, where we're going. We would love for you to join the ride with us, follow along on our podcast, on our socials, kind of all the things. And we will end up kind of talking more about the work that we're doing and how we're trying to, kind of rethink how we're talking about HR and strategy alongside the, people strategy alongside the business, and how health and wellness comes into all this from a personal being. I had a pretty scary health journey that, we'll get into that in other episodes, but Allie's had her own wellness journey, and, being able to recognize that is happening with people that are in your organization and your family, and how do we support that? So we've got a lot more coming. I can't wait to share it all with you. So we will see you in the next episode, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.